My name is actually Patrice, and as many of you know, that is French for Patrick. With no gender reveal parties back in the olden days, I think my French-Acadian, Canadian-descended parents played it safe. Patrice could be a boy or a girl. I ended up going by she and her, and you'll figure out my age during the homily. I'd like to say I'm permanently 49, but graying auburn hair and wrinkles where they don't belong might be giving me away. For the vision impaired, I'm wearing a white and navy blue dress with a light blue jacket. This homily was inspired by the people of this congregation as they expressed so much fear after the election, and by writings of the Berkeley professor and former Cabinet Secretary of Labor, Robert Reich. Before I begin, can I have some help from all of you? When I point in your direction with one hand, like this, would you please say no really loudly? If I use both hands like this, would you join me in saying fearless? Okay, no, fearless, you got it. This is gonna be a piece of cake. Albert Einstein said, failure is success in progress. Many of us believe our country is failing, but could it actually be in the early stages of a success in progress? Like a tsunami. Tsunamis start off as a rumble deep in the ocean and bubble up to the surface, then rise to become a powerful force, overtaking the land. Like the attack on Harvard following Columbia. Columbia bent the knee, but Harvard rumbled, stood up, and said, no. That's right, they said no. Then a tsunami of colleges joined them, and as a collective, they are fighting back to protect our democracy, our constitutional rights. That gives all of us hope. That is success in progress. What do you see? Do you see hope? Hope that the bones of our breaking democracy will mend stronger than before? Or do you see despair, believing that after these terrible fractures, our democracy will be permanently confined to a wheelchair? It's pretty normal to feel despair right now, watching the cruelty to immigrants, veterans, science, climate, the poor. Our bewildered and anxious minds fear a chaotic, unpredictable, and unknowable future, right? But a grounded mind, as James was showing us, is the mind that stays right here, right now, aware and in the present moment. Look around you. Hope is sitting right next to you, or in front of you, or behind you. Our fellowship is made up of acceptance and kindness, good deeds, and solid moral values. We support justice, equity, compassion, and we believe the science of climate change. We protest for peace, liberty, and no more lies. We work with one another through gardening, auctions, potlucks, worship, Zoom meetings, singing, and ukuleles. And did I say something about the kayaks? If you've got my back, and I have yours. And together, we stay focused in the present, helping each other and connecting within our community and with other like-minded communities. Shouldn't we believe that we have a good chance of winning, as the man with the tan likes to say? Together, don't we have a pretty good odds of pulling back our democracy from the grip of authoritarianism? President Obama, my secret hero, says that democracy requires constant effort. It requires vigilance and engagement from us, the citizens. He said, democracy can buckle when we give in to fear. We can't have our democracy buckling. Fear is a life-saving physical response to threats from things like lions, bears, zombies, and now it comes from the news. We must find the courage to tamp it down. Tamp down that fear and instead raise our voices, organize, and march forward non-violently to protest and protect what our forefathers and mothers and thousands of veterans died to defend. We are neither helpless nor hopeless because we have a big, beautiful plan that does not steal money from the poor and working class to give it to the rich and ruling class. It's a well-traveled roadmap called the Civil Rights Movement. Juneteenth, which commemorates the end of slavery in 1865, is right around the corner. It encourages us to take our cues from the courageous Black Americans, and Japanese and white ones too, who paved these paths, who taught us we can feel fear and despair and still be fearless. That's right. Even when today's headlines always seem worse than yesterday's. But this is not a story about politics. It's about how politics and power are used to create false enemies, to make us afraid, to divide us, to suppress us, and to weaken us. If we are afraid enough, we will all stay home, consuming social media, connecting with algorithms that program us to think in limited, frightened, passive ways. And that's the whole point. Authoritarianism does not want us being socially active, connecting with real people within our own community, because thinking people take action, and action makes us fearless. That's exactly right. And fearless people are success in action. This is also a story about hope, determination, courage, and the fearlessness of a very special, amazing woman I met at the Israeli soldiers' presentation about Gaza recently, called Breaking the Silence. She's a UU member many of you know, admire, and call friend. I'm talking about the incredible woman who stayed on freedom in the civil rights movement so that a black man could be elected president and Beyonce could tell the world that country music is black music too. Please give a big welcome for my new friend, Zoharah Simmons, our very own UU civil rights trailblazer. Yes. Yes, Zoharah. Once upon a time, this is actually where the story starts. Once upon a time, there was at least one little white kid from the most northerly and whitest state in the contiguous U.S., the great state of Maine, and I did not pay much attention in history class. Yet, decades later, I still remember the civil rights movement because it was so scary. The year I was born, 1954, the Supreme Court declared racial segregation, separating white people from black people, unconstitutional. That event triggered tremendous social upheaval, rebellion, fear, courage, destruction, murder, inspiration, and the eventual success for what we most recently called DEI. DEI. DEI actually promotes the fair treatment and full participation of all people, particularly those who have been historically marginalized. DEI is something that until January, so many of us, including our military, were proud of. Businesses acknowledged that it helped their bottom line, right, Target? And like democracy, we all took it for granted as part of our safe, modern American culture. When I was a year old in 1955, Zoharah Simmons, known then as Gwen Robinson, but I'm going to stick mostly with Zoharah because that's how we know her. She was 10 years old, living with her much-loved grandmother, her mama, in Memphis, Tennessee. That year, in 1955, 3 powerful events rocked this country. A 14-year-old boy, a black child, named Emmett Till, was kidnapped, beaten, brutally murdered, then dumped into the Tallahatchie River in Mississippi. 3 days later, his mutilated body rose to the surface. When his mother insisted on an open casket so the world could see what had been done to her son, America was shocked, horrified, and outraged. And many of us cried. Mamie Till Mobley, his mom, was heartbroken, angry, and she was fearless. Also that year, over in Alabama, good trouble was brewing. Zoharah described to me the humiliating bus protocol in Montgomery back then. If you were black, you had to step up to the driver, put your coin in the cup, get off the bus, walk to the back of the bus, climb up those steps to sit or stand in the back. If the bus driver felt mean that day, after you deposited your coin and started walking to the back of the bus, he'd take off, just like that. It didn't matter if you were 8 months pregnant or had to get to work or held a hungry child. If you did manage to grab a seat in the back and the white section filled up, black folks had to give up their seats so lily white lazybones could sit down. One day on December 1st, the bus driver told 4 black people to get up and give their seats to those 4 white people. 3 black people got up. Rosa Parks stayed right in her seat. When the bus driver told her to move, she said no. That's right. She said no. And then she got arrested. I was stunned when Zoharah told me that this event had been carefully planned and well organized by the Women's Political Council. Rosa Parks was fearless, and so were all those other women. 4 days later, on December 5th, Martin Luther King led the Montgomery bus boycott. Black Americans made up 70% of Montgomery's bus riders, which meant they also made up 70% of the city bus revenue. So the Reverend organized a nonviolent, community-wide boycott of the city buses. These people walked, carpooled, and struggled in bad weather to get where they needed to go. They were organized and they persisted. 1 year later, the Supreme Court ruled that segregation on public buses was unconstitutional. Those persistent Black Americans of Montgomery were fearless. That was success in progress. In February 1960, when I was 6, Zoharah was 16, and 4 neatly dressed Black college students from North Carolina A&T State University sat down at the whites-only Woolworth's lunch counter in Greensboro, North Carolina, and politely asked to be served. They were told, and then they were told to leave. They said no. So Woolworth's closed the coffee shop. The next day, more college kids showed up and sat down. They were told to leave, and they said, and then they were all arrested. As they were handcuffed and pulled out of their seats, they promised, more students will come to take our place. And that's what happened. Over and over, day after day, those organized and persistent students calmly endured harassment, insults, and threats, all without retaliation. Those kids were fearless, and that is success in progress. Zoharah said that's where the word sit-in comes from, and I didn't know that. She said when summer vacation arrived and the college kids went home, the local high school kids from Dudley High School took over. High school kids willing to go to jail. Can you even imagine that? The intense coverage of these kids triggered a tsunami of sit-ins at segregated restaurants, libraries, theaters, and other public places in over 50 cities in 9 states. In Birmingham, they had so many college kids and high schoolers participating, it was called the Children's Crusade. Children literally made history and changed history. Those kids were, and that is success in progress. The success of the sit-ins, plus the success of the 1961 Freedom Riders, who rode the interstate buses into the segregated southern states, led to the organization of SNCC, SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, founded by Ella Baker, a seasoned, energetic, mature community organizer and a compatriot of Martin Luther King. She saw the need to coordinate and organize these student activists. SNCC would play a central role in the civil rights movement, which would be chaired by the future senator, the great John Lewis, and it would become pivotal in Zoharah's life. In 1962, when I was in 2nd grade, Zoharah won a full scholarship to the prestigious Spelman College. Martin Luther King, meanwhile, had been leading peaceful protests against segregation for 7 long years. Zoharah loved Spelman and thrived there. She also discovered SNCC there. Weirdly similar to today, Spelman College faced city and state repercussions for student activism. Zoharah was told in no uncertain terms that if she joined SNCC or the protests, her scholarship would be terminated and she would be expelled. Undeterred, she snuck out of her dorm to go to those SNCC meetings. She was scared, but she was also fearless. Zoharah went back to Memphis for her summer job, washing dishes, where she dreamed of going to Washington for the August 28th March for Jobs and Freedom. That day in August, she gathered friends and family in her living room, one of the few with a television, to watch Martin Luther King's iconic speech, "I Have a Dream," calling for the end of racism with 250,000 people in attendance. He was, and she was inspired. As her sophomore year was ending, she was invited by SNCC to spend the summer helping to organize the right to register to vote in Mississippi, where, unlike in Tennessee, Black people couldn't vote. Her mama, who had been an enslaved woman when she was younger, said no and warned her she would be surrounded by hate, despised by white people, and she could even get killed like those 4 Black girls in Birmingham who had died in a bombing event the year before. The entire country was boiling in fear over the recent assassination of President John F. Kennedy. Zoharah planned to leave anyway on the bus bound to Mississippi right after her exams. Packed and ready to go, she woke up to a 6 a.m. knock on her dorm door. "Gwen, your grandmother's here to take you home." She never made that bus. Her grandmother argued, begged, and threatened, but a determined Zoharah snuck to a nearby payphone and called SNCC, who quickly sent her a bus ticket. But her mama got to the mail first, tore that ticket right up, then locked Zoharah at home for 2 weeks. So Zoharah asked her friend to call SNCC, explain what happened, and another ticket arrived at her friend's house. To the threat of "don't come back" from her angry family, Zoharah finally left to join hundreds of college kids from everywhere in what would come to be known as the 1964 Freedom Summer Project. I asked her how she found the courage to go. Her answer still rings in my ears. "I was terrified. I was terrified for 2 years." After arriving in Mississippi, the members were told that 3 boys had just disappeared. Disappeared was code for dead. But 2 of them were white, and no one thought they would kill white boys. Zoharah said SNCC held a meeting that evening and offered everyone the chance to go home. Nobody left. They were young, scared, determined, and they were fearless. The three young SNCC members, James Chaney, a black civil rights activist, Andrew Goodman, and Michael Schwerner, Jewish activists from New York, just disappeared. They were investigating a church burning and were arrested by local police, who then handed them over to the local Ku Klux Klan. When their bodies were discovered in August, buried on the side of a dam, the rumble built into a tsunami of national outrage that galvanized support for the Civil Rights Act of 1964. A very sad and tragic success in progress. Zoharah explained how SNCC was an incredibly organized community who had your back. If you got arrested, you knew someone would be bailing you out or fighting for you. I told her it sounded like the military's leave no man behind. She softly said, yes, we were the non-violent foot soldiers in a non-violent army, terrified and fearless foot soldiers. Do you see how these horrible failures of human behavior, how the desire of white supremacy to rob Black Americans of their rights, their dignity, and even their lives, created the rumble that led to a tsunami of fearless people of all ages, colors, genders, pushing democracy forward, one small, grueling success at a time? Do you see how, within the depths of such depravity, courage rises? How the power of nonviolent protests, grassroots organizing within our communities, and collective economic pressure creates success in progress? Our community strength lies within our own diversity. Together, we can be hopeful as well as fearless. If an inexperienced young college student named Gwen Simmons, despite feeling terror every day, could become one of the only woman project directors in an area filled with hate during a time of such physical violence, we can certainly volunteer at our local food bank, voice our concerns continuously to our representatives, walk in a protest, support journalists by subscribing to a newspaper, and buy an extra can of beans for a hungry family. We can support the people who are being impacted by our current government of fear. Do you see that now? That big, beautiful highway I couldn't resist? That the blood, sweat, and tears of the civil rights movement built, that same highway can guide our actions and give us hope during these difficult times. President Obama states that democracy weakens if you disengage or lose faith in it, and he often says that real change comes from the ground up, that democracy is not just a system, it's a moral project requiring hope, participation, and resilience. Theodore Parker, an early 19th century American abolitionist, someone who fought against slavery, and reforming minister at the Unitarian Church, said, "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice." Those words inspired Abraham Lincoln, Mahatma Gandhi, and the Reverend Martin Luther King. They also inspired Barack Obama, who in his 2006 book, The Audacity of Hope, wrote, quote, "The arc of history may bend toward justice, but it doesn't bend on its own. We have to do the work of making sure it bends in that direction," unquote. So, my friends, it's time to plan, organize, protest, and connect to help each other. And just as importantly, as former Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, another little hero, repeatedly reminds us, we must reach out and be welcoming to those we disagree with. Communities are made up of diverse people. We must listen and try to understand why we are where we are. The failures we are seeing today can become a success in progress. We can organize and make a difference. And like our friend Zoharah Simmons, we can be inspired to rise beyond our fears, to grab onto and hold onto our fragile and precious democracy. So be fearless and let the rumble begin. Thank you.